Hello, I'm Rob from SkidSteerSolutions.com. I'm here to talk to you about the features and benefits of the Bradco Ground Shark Extreme Duty Brush Cutter for skid steer loaders and compact track loaders. As with all attachments, features and benefits go two ways. There's pros and cons. The first thing I want to show you here is, we'll talk about the pro of this deck. This is a fold-away deck. So you'll see a lot of mowers with this style, and they actually have an open throat design where the blades actually extrude past the front of the mower. And a lot of people feel that's unsafe for the simple reason that the blades are actually there. When the motor's spinning down, you could accidentally walk by there and lose a foot or so. So what they've done here is they've made this a little safer. So this is great for people that just are a little bit unsure about that. They've got this patented deck. And what this deck does is when you get up against a tree, it'll actually push up and out of the way. I'll try to give you a little demo here. So you see how this goes up? So just imagine as you're pushing at the base of a tree, this comes up, and it allows the blades to expose a little bit closer to the opening, or it creates an opening so the blades can be exposed. Now, there's two things about this. This is really great. It's a nice, safe way of doing it. However, it does have a tendency to get jammed. So if you're working with a lot of material, you can end up having this thing getting jammed a lot of times, or it kind of gets in the way of lighter trees. It won't allow you to actually cut the tree kind of gets pushed over. So you just want to be aware of that when you're comparing this to other styles of mowers. The other thing here is we've got these safety chains. What the chain does is it slows the velocity of the material coming out the front. So if you hit something and you take a piece of it out of a tree, and that tree doesn't end up going back through the blades and getting mulched, that piece of tree can end up coming out the front. It'll hit these chains. These chains absorb some of that energy and try to deflect that piece down so it doesn't just fire out like a rocket and go out and possibly hit something or a parked car or something like that. So this is a really good thing to have just for another safety feature. So that's what kind of this whole front end here is. It's all about safety. Now this bar, this is the push bar. What this does is it allows you to get up against a tree and you start pushing against that tree. This is coming up out of the way, and at the same time you're cutting it. So you're cutting it and pushing the tree away. So what this does is it's keeping the trees from falling back on your machine while you're cutting. It allows you to get to it, you start cutting it, and as you're cutting it, it lets the tree flex a little bit more so you can get deeper and deeper into it. Now this design is meant for up to 7-inch material. So just imagine you've got a 7-inch tree, you're at the base, you're coming up to it, you're pushing, this is moving up out of the way, it cuts a tree, pushes it over, and then as you push it over, you run it over, and it actually draws it back into the blades and pulls it back in so it gets mulched up. So let's talk a little bit more about this push bar. It's a tubular frame design. It's got gusseting here to give it added strength. The tubular frame goes down into the skeletal frame of the mower, and then you've got the deck. So this allows the pressure when you're pushing with a skid steer, because you've got a lot of weight there, you've got a lot of torque, especially with these track machines. You've got a lot of torque that's pushing this over. And you've got when you first start pushing, you've got a stationary device. So you need to be able to take that force, transition it into the frame, and get it right back against the skid steer quick attach. So that's what this enables you to do. If you follow this along, you've got tubing running all the way down into the skeletal frame, back to the quick attach. So that's a really strong method and a really good way of getting that pressure back here. Now, what we do is we've got a deck on here as well. It's a 1/4-inch steel deck. However, you'll see wherever there's reinforced areas, you've got at least a 3/8 to a 1/2 inch. So you'll see in some areas like here, you've got 1/2 inch, you've got 3/8 here. But the minimum, kind of the deck covering is an A50 steel, and it's a 1/4 inch. Now let's talk about the drive system. Bradco uses a direct drive system with a planetary gearbox in here. And what that does is it allows it to carry that great big disc that you see underneath here with the 4 blades, and it can take a lot of impact on that wheel without damaging the motor or the drive system. So what we have here is we have a direct drive motor. It has a double check valve system in it, so it protects the motor against surges or spikes or direct hits where the motor comes to a quick stop. And by doing that, there's actually no K-strain on here. We've got a direct drive, just 2 hoses coming in and out of the motor. So you've got your pressure and return. Then that goes onto our planetary, and then the planetary has the blade holder that holds onto the disc and then the blades. Another thing you'll notice is this gauge. What this gauge shows you is your pressure. So when you're operating this mower, you're going to see the pressure actually building and backing off as you're hitting things or as you're cutting. So the harder you're working this, you're going to see the pressure rise. What that does for the operator, it gives him a visual indication so he can see if he's overworking his machine and or mower. If you overwork the mowers a little too much, sometimes you don't have adequate cooling on the machines and you'll start to see the temperature rise. So what you do is you just back off, do a little bit lighter brush, don't go in as fast as you're normally cutting, and then you'll see this pressure drop, and then you look up and you'll see the temperature start dropping in your machine as well. So it's just another good visual indicator for the operator to see so that he's running safely and efficiently with this mower. Now I've covered the top side features and benefits of the Bradco Ground Shark. Now let's just flip it up and have a look underneath. Now look at the size of this wheel. That's the first thing you're going to notice, is it's got a great big wheel. It's a double sandwich wheel, so what you've got here is you've got the blades actually inside the wheel. So if I rotate this around a little bit, you can actually see one of the blades protruding. Okay, and so what this does is this gives us our weight, but it also gives us a little bit better or a little bit different type of wear surface than what we get on a standard mower. Most standard mowers, they'll just have a blade with a bolt and it'll hang off the wheel. This actually has it sandwiched. The feature of that is to have the blades safely protract up inside the wheel. The downside to that is if you do get a deflection on the blade, and this has happened to me, if you hit a rock or something and the blade gets a little bend in it, it'll slide back up inside here and you won't get it back out. And so what'll end up happening is it'll cause an imbalance on the wheel and the wheel starts to shake. So that's just something to be aware. If you do start using this and you nail something really hard, you get a deflection in the blade, it slides back inside and you start to feel the mower shaking, you want to come out, you're going to have to hammer that blade out and you are going to have to change it because there's no real good way of actually fixing that blade. So here's a typical blade. It's off one of the Terra mowers. You've got the blade, you've got the bolt, and then it goes onto the blade bar. This is a really simple way of operating this. It's got a large wear surface. If you do get a bend in the blade or a nick in the blade or whatever, it doesn't affect the operation. Where it does affect the operation up here. So you kind of have to weigh off the features and benefits when you're shopping for these mowers to kind of look and see what you're happiest with and what you're willing to partake in when it comes to maintaining the mowers. What I mean by maintaining is Bradco uses a 4-bladed design here. Plus they also have these stump grinder teeth on here. So the cost of ownership of this device can get kind of expensive if you're going through blades, and especially if you hit the ground with these stump grinder teeth. If you hit a rock or anything with them, it'll take the edge right off of them and you will have to replace them. There's 19 teeth, they're approximately $40 each, as well as the cost of the blades. So that's just something else to keep in mind when you're looking at this type of mower. So I'm just going to go into depth a little bit more about this Bradco Ground Shark disc that's underneath this mower. What you see here is you see 2 plates. There's 2 discs that sandwich together and contain the blades. The bottom of the lower disc, you've got a wear surface that's welded on here, as well as it's countersunk to protect the bolts. That way the bolt heads don't get worn off, so when you do have to change the blades, you can get to the bolts and get them out easily. There's a hatch at the top there that you unbolt, and then you get access to the top of them where the nuts are, and then the bolts just drop out. Looking at this disc, you see a little separator here, this little spreader, to keep this distance the same because these blades do slide down inside here. The blades are reversed. Every other one's reversed, so this is the lower cutting one. If you look at the other one here, it's raised up. And what that does is that gives you a little bit more chewing when you get into the larger material. It allows it to act more like an axe where you're hitting in one spot, hitting in the next, hitting in the next, and back and forth, so it alternates and it takes much bigger material out for you. The underside here, you see we've got, these are optional, but these are your stump grinding teeth. And they've been put in an offset manner here, so you see there's 4 here, there's 5 here. That way you can lay it down on top of a stump and it actually does some grinding for you. You do have to be careful with these. You don't want to use it in rocky terrain where you're putting it down on top of rocks because you'll dull them pretty quickly. But otherwise, if you're in material where you know you can lower it down on top of a stump, it acts as a perfect stump grinder. So you take the top off it and grind it right down to the ground. Down inside here, the center, this is the bolts that hold it to the drive system. So the drive system's up on top there with a planetary gearbox and then the motor on top. and then this bolts up inside there. Here's another feature of the Bradco Ground Shark Extreme Duty Brush Cutter, is this replaceable drag chute. So what this does is, this is your wear surface. So when you're running it across the ground and you're doing lots of extreme mowing, you're hitting rocks and things, and rather than wear the surface of the mower down, what you're doing is you're wearing the shoe off. Once the shoe comes off, or it's completely worn down, you've just got a few bolts to remove it, and you can put another one on, and you're up and going again. OSHA guidelines are very important to Paladin, so they provide you with this safety chain. And what this does is it's meant to hook along the front of your frame. At the base of there's usually a hookup point there where maybe you would hook your chain onto when you're transporting the machine. This hooks into that position. And what it does is it keeps the operator from bringing the blades up to head level. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to have it flipped up in the air and flipped back, so that if a blade or some bit of material came back to the operator, it could hurt the operator. With that said, some of the other manufacturers, they use a safety stop. And so what will happen is as soon as you lift the mower up to a certain height or a certain angle, it stops the mower all the time. Most people find that to be a real nuisance, because what ends up happening is every time you're in a little bit of rough terrain and you're trying to get it at the right angle, the mower shuts off. So you're constantly having to reset it. So this is just a real simple way of doing the same thing, keeping it so the operator doesn't forget and bring the blades up to head level. But also I want to recommend that you are using a polycarbonate, at least minimum 1/2 inch cover on your machine. We have one that we put on only when we're mowing. Right now I've just got the standard glass on here, but when we are mowing with this type of thing, we do put our polycarbonate shield over the front of the cab just to protect the operator. And this can be everything from a blade coming off to heavy material going out the front of the mower and coming back at the operator. So always, it's really important that we protect our operators. We want to have them around for another day. That's really important to SkidSteerSolutions.com as well as Bradco. We're SkidSteerSolutions.com, where you find the finest and quality of brush cutters and mowers, including the Bradco Extreme Duty Ground Shark.